From a network of highly secure, top-secret locations across North America, this is the moment San Antonio, South Texas has been wildly anticipating for months and months. What else could they have been talking about? The return of the Spurs Insider podcast with Express-News beat writers Tom Orsborn and Jeff McDonald. I am your host, Mike Finger. What on earth are we going to talk about in this wildly just eagerly anticipated event? This thing that has been months in the making. So much planning went into this return of this podcast. What is the topic, Tom Orsborn?
Well, Kada had a breakout season. I
was going to make a Kada joke. Why do we go to Kada as a joke?
And I was going
to do the same thing.
I was going through a mental checklist. Who do I say? And Kata's a good sport. So, anyway, but not every time. We had a great season. Hope he comes back.
It's a fun name to say.
The other minor news that's associated with the part of this podcast is the Spurs just got their third generational prospect in 3 lotteries. Victor Wembanyama is coming to San Antonio, saving the franchise, perhaps saving the state, perhaps saving the union. The French 7'4" phenom, which is the kind of word that only describes young athletes. But a phenom to end all phenoms is going to be a Spur. What does that mean? Just the Cliff's Notes version of the story we've been hearing all week. To your local Cagers, Jeff.
It means that this whole rebuilding project that the Spurs embarked on, really starting 4 years ago, but more in earnest 2 years ago, and super in earnest last summer. That whole rebuilding process, they just hit fast forward on it. I mean, we talked a lot about how they did a good job of building around the margins with some of these draft picks they've added, the Sohans, the Devin Vassell's, the Keldon Johnsons, but they were going to make the whole thing work. They were going to need a star to build around, and they weren't going to be able to find that guy in free agency. That doesn't happen in San Antonio. They're going to have to draft that guy, and in about a month from now, 6 weeks from now, they're going to draft that guy in Victor Wembanyama. So it gives them the linchpin of the rebuilding process, and goes without saying, it's the key to the whole thing. He's the key to the whole thing. All the work, all the planning that Brian Wright and R.C. Buford and the Spurs front office have put into trying to build this team back into a playoff contender, a championship contender. Victor's going to be the linchpin to all of that.
Yeah, Tom and I were in 2 different parts of the McCormick Place here in Chicago.
That's the seafood restaurant?
It is. And it also, they do seafood and they do television events. The side of the draft lottery on Tuesday, Tom had access to the drawing room, which meant he was sequestered. He had to hand over all his communication devices, his recorder. He could take a pad and pencil in there. He was in there for a couple hours with the people who were drawing the ping pong balls, and he knew an hour before the outside world knew that the Spurs had won the rights to Victor Wembanyama. I'm in the room where the TV broadcast is being held. It's full of all the GMs and coaches and executives and scouts from around the league, and it was the most. Tom could speak to his experience a little bit, but you compare it to Game 7s of NBA Finals and championship games and playoff games and all the kind of tension that we're used to. It was unlike any of that because everybody in the room realized that they were about to see something that was out of their control, completely out of their control, that could determine the shape of their franchise's future, their individual future, for like a decade to come. And all you could do is just sit there and wait. I've never seen tension quite like that in a room before in my life. And Tom, you could talk about what it was like in the room itself, where they're actually picking the ping pong balls out of the hopper And then you have all these guys like Brian Wright is in there looking through his sheets of paper to see who has the 4-ball combination. I mean, what was that like being in there, and how would you describe that?
Yeah, tense. Tense is perfect description. You know, my heart. You know, I've been doing this for a long time, covered a lot of big events, but yeah, my heart was beating pretty quickly. And it's just the enormity of the changes that can happen if they have great fortune for a third time. You know, the ticket sales go through the roof. They're relevant again. The worth of the franchises jumps up. You know, just on and on. TV exposure, but you know, you think about what it's going to mean for you personally too. So all that was factored into it. So it's very tense. It's not your ordinary lottery in terms of, well, the number 1 pick, you know, you want the guy, but you still not, you can't label him a generational player. And we all know what Victor means to the NBA. So what was weird about it was it happened so quickly. You know,
Yep.
You settle in, they give you some instructions, do's and don'ts. Then they go through explaining the process. Everything's airtight. I mean, it's eyeballs are on this. The league leaves nothing left to chance. It's very, you know, very well done. And then it happened.
But they just to interrupt, they leave nothing to chance in leaving everything to chance.
Yeah, great, great.
They're preserving the fact that this is entirely up to which lottery balls come out of this thing.
Yeah.
They didn't even, anyway, proceed.
Yeah, so it happened just so quickly. The balls are drawn, the 4 balls come out. The number 1 pick goes to the San Antonio Spurs. And it's like, whoa, wait a minute, already? You know what?
Yeah.
But there it was.
Because in the drawing, they pick the first team first. It's different how they announce it. You know, when they announce it on TV, it goes backwards. So they pick the first team first.
Exactly. And I'm thinking, you know, maybe some of the representatives are thinking, wait a minute, can we do this again? You know, wait, I wasn't settled in my seat. I wasn't rubbing my good luck charm correctly, or, you know, whatever.
Or if you're the Pelicans and you're in like you're the 14th team or whatever, you're just like, never mind, we'll just go home now.
Exactly. So Brian isn't aware of it. You know, the mathematical process, he's looking through the papers. He isn't aware of it. And then Clay Allen, the legal counsel from the Houston Rockets, sitting to his right. And keep in mind, Brian was as stoic as you can get. And, you know, but at that point, there was a little bit of a look of confusion on his face. And Clay Allen did him a solid and leans over and said, I think you got it. And then ticks later, you know, just seconds later, it's announced, first pick goes to San Antonio Spurs. And he does the fist pump, just an understated fist pump, and a slight smile crosses his face. And then he's immediately back to stoic mode. And, you know, to his credit, he said afterward that he didn't want to, you know, he wanted to be respectful of his peers in the room and not put on a show of emotion, which came later on the stage with Peter J-Hold. But yeah, Brian handled it really well. It was very professional, very classy.
I don't know I don't know if we need to address these yahoos, but there's always the people that think it's rigged. And like, I've heard some people say, like, why don't, you know, if it's going to be on the up and up, why don't they just televise the ping pong ball drawing and we can all watch it live? That the drama's gone because you're picking the first team first.
Yes.
That way. Yeah, that's why they don't show the ping pong ball drawing, but it's also why they let, you know, impartial media in to witness it. Like, it's important for them to keep that transparency.
And every team has a representative there watching. So, and I think from France is there watching because the top pick is Victor Wembanyama, and there's a French newspaper in there watching the whole thing. And also just think about the TV show. The NBA is good at creating TV. And by the way, the ratings are going to the roof this postseason. For anybody who thought that might have died, they're pretty good at drama. And as Tom sort of explained there, it's not like a lottery where one ball comes out with the Spurs logo on it and they win it. That's how it was back in the day when it was like 14 envelopes. Now it's lottery balls, and these teams have pages and pages and pages of 4 lottery ball combinations. And when you pull them out, what Brian was doing is going through all these combinations. Like the Spurs, there's thousands of possible 4-ball combinations. The Spurs have 14% of those. So you hear the 4 lottery ball numbers. You have to, Tom, you can verify this. Everyone is going through sheets of paper to try to find those 4 numbers in a row. And that's why Clay from Houston had found those 4 numbers first and realized, oh, these belong to you, Brian Wright, the San Antonio Spurs. And you think of what that looks like on TV. It's not nearly as compelling as the deputy commissioner standing up and opening envelopes and doing it that way in reverse order. So that's how that works.
It was all beyond my Algebra 2 education, so, but and interestingly, Portland was 1 number off the last number. They were 1 tick off. And then amazingly, they get to the 4th pick and the Spurs come up twice. They win the 4th pick twice. So they have to do do-overs. In fact, they did it over 3 times because Spurs won it the first time. Their combination came up the first time. Charlotte, which had the number 2 pick already, came up the second time. And then the Spurs came up a third time. So how lucky, Lady Luck, how much was she embracing the Spurs that night? It was just incredible.
Anyone who's listening to this podcast undoubtedly is fully aware of the Spurs. They're fully aware of the Spurs history in the draft and the fact that they won David Robinson, they won Tim Duncan, they've won Victor Wembanyama. But it's almost like the more you're aware of that, the more you take for granted just how absolutely crazy that is. That crazy. I would submit, I sort of mentioned this to Tom yesterday, that if you could pick 3 lotteries for the Spurs to have won in their history, it would be exactly those 3.
Yeah.
Because of the timing of them. And that the David Robinson lottery was the one that essentially kept the Spurs in San Antonio. That was a team that was an Hemisphere arena in constant fear of being moved. And it's not like they would have moved if that next year if they hadn't won the lottery. But David saved the franchise in many ways.
They would have moved eventually. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So you absolutely needed that one. The Duncan one sets up the dynasty of all dynasties in 21st century sports. I mean, the 20-year postseason run, 5 championships. That's the one you wanted, maybe of all time. The Tim Duncan.
The AT&T Center too.
The AT&T Center, which might be aging here.
Well, there's another topic there.
But another topic, but that also kept the Spurs around because they couldn't play in the Alamodome forever. And Tom laughed yesterday when I said this, but if the Spurs have the option, knowing what they know now, and having won the David Robinson lottery and the Tim Duncan lottery, of winning a third one, I think that they pick the Victor Wembanyama lottery. And I'm not saying this player is better than this player, but it's better for the Spurs to have won the Victor Wembanyama lottery than the LeBron James lottery. Because now they are set conceivably for 10 years into the future. If LeBron James was around with Tim Duncan, do you need to win? Maybe you win 7 titles instead of 5. LeBron James is great, but he doesn't bring you into a new era. Tim Duncan era covered 20 years that overlap with LeBron in a lot of ways. This one sets them up into an entirely new era of the NBA, and where they're going to be a player in this league, a contender should be, done not to put too much on a 19-year-old kid. But I mean, the tickets have been sold already. The national media is coming. ESPN is going to be around. All the networks are going to be around, much to Jeff's chagrin. It's a huge thing, and for this franchise to have won precisely the 3 lotteries that they needed to win is just staggering to me.
Yeah, and It's so fascinating. I was along the lines of what Pop said to us in Dallas in the season finale, that we deserve no more luck ever. And you think about those things. How does the proverbial basketball gods, how did they figure this out? My personal explanation is that they're all liberal Democrats, like Trump, like Pop.
Yeah.
So they favored him, but it's how does this work out? How does one franchise win these three linchpin generational epic players? So
You want to
one we don't know about yet. I mean, I'm jumping the gun.
let's talk about him. Let's talk about the guy the Spurs are going to draft. Well, I mean, I spent a lot of time on the phone yesterday with like NBA people, scouts, just trying to like just get I mean, we've seen the highlights and we've heard the buzz, and some of us on this podcast have actually already seen Victor play in person. But I mean, you hear people describe him as like a taller Kevin Durant, a much taller Steph Curry, like Giannis with like basketball skills and a shot, with Rudy Gobert's defensive chops. And it just sounds like ridiculous hyperbole. And then you watch the highlights and you're like, these videos have to be like deep faked. Like there's no way a human being that looks like that can do these things. And I guess I spent a lot of time yesterday just trying to figure out how much of this is hyperbole. And most people seem to say that it's not. Like, he's all those things, and he's going to be all those things, and he could be the best player in the world in a very short time. So, but
I sort of think that the caution there.
Yeah, we're going to get to that.
That's eventually all those things. I think some of those are wildly, just absurd. He's not a much taller Steph Curry. Like that's a bit too far.
What was his percentage? Yeah,
his 3-point percentage in the French league this year is in 20s. So I don't think Steph Curry ever shot that. But a lot of it is like he was trying to do things. This is like running one-footed 3-pointer, which you would see in the highlight reels and think, holy crap. Well, he would miss 4 or 5 of those in a row because he was trying to do stuff that probably wasn't necessary in the course of the game. But we're trying to tell the balance here between buying into the wild, absurd hype and yet not underselling it, because he's also is legitimately. I think this is, you get a consensus from everybody here at the combine, from across the league, everybody who knows basketball. He is the most anticipated basketball prospect in the last 20 years since LeBron James. Probably the most complete prospect since then. Whether that translates into championships right away, whether it even translates into playoffs right away for your local Cagers, is yet to be determined. I think Vegas still has the Spurs as a better bet to miss the playoffs this first year than to make them. That doesn't factor in who the Spurs might add to go around Victor Wembanyama in the next few months. But I guess
what I was getting at is we've seen players with these sorts of skills in various incarnations, and we've seen players with this type of size. We've never seen these skills paired with that size before. It's a completely, foreign in every sense of the word prospect. I mean, when LeBron called him an alien, that's about the most apt description you could have of him. We have never seen anything like this on a basketball court before.
Yeah,
correct.
In a much smaller version, in a much different world, in '87, Robinson had a lot of this applied to him. I mean, he was something people had never seen before. But it took him a long time to win a championship, and it was only because of Tim. Tim didn't have these otherworldly skills, but my God, the best total package I've ever seen.
Well, part of the difference there is that this current era of Victor Wembanyama is allowed to show those kind of skills. Like David,
yes.
At David's time, it was a time when if you were 7 feet tall, you got down on the block with your back to the basket, posted people up. And just the fact that
he shot a lot of outside. He shot a lot of outside mid-range stuff that wasn't sure for a guy.
And that was a huge changing of stereotype, is to be able to shoot mid-range stuff. Now we're at the point where he's shooting from 30 feet, you know, on 1 foot on the run. It's going to be the basketball stuff is just it blows your mind as to what he can accomplish out there, who he can be. The face of the franchise stuff. We can get into that.
The other thing is his game. Maybe this sounds counterintuitive. I don't know, but his game is much more built for the NBA court and rules than Europe. I mean, he obviously was great in Europe and dominant in Europe, but the spacing in the NBA is going to open up so much more for him that he's going to be pretty impossible to guard. He's going to be pretty impossible to guard. Like, I was talking to someone that watched most of his games in France last year, and it's like if he could get the ball anywhere in the paint, it's 2 points. It's just automatic 2 points. But in Europe, you can also, goaltend, station 3 guys in the paint just waiting for him, just keep him out of there. You can't do that in the NBA. The rules are set up for him to just annihilate people. So, I think it's not out of the realm of the possibility that he's going to look, as crazy as this is to say, he's going to look better as an NBA rookie maybe at times than he did, playing against French competition.
What we don't know, or I guess I should say what I don't know, is what does he have some of those Duncan-like intangibles? What is he like in terms of fitting in with Pop and, getting over yourself, mantra, culture that Spurs have?
We obviously say that. I don't have to say that, Tom, and that is a topic of depending on when this podcast posts to the internet, whenever it comes off the presses, whenever it's published.
Has that how it works? Or there's presses for these?
I hear a column promo coming up.
I think so. Column promo. Where is it going to be placed, Tom? That's very important. The either upcoming or recent column in the Express-News newspaper, expressnews.com, Sports Spurs Nation newsletter, which is no longer the newsletter. We've changed the name. All that stuff available, expressnews.com. There are some, you talk to people who know Victor well, there are some similarities between Victor Wembanyama and Tim Duncan personality-wise, coachability-wise, low-key-wise. But the key difference here is it's 26 years later. The world is different.
Yeah.
A Tim Duncan type is different. And this is also going to kind of rile up one Jeff McDonald a little bit when he considers how his day-to-day is changing. But like Victor Wembanyama has a film crew with him all the time. His people are very meticulous. A lot of people have very nice things to say about his family and the people who are advising him. They put a lot of thought into creating this basketball superstar, and really much of his life has been dedicated to maximizing his ability not only on the court but just to impact, to be a true NBA superstar. That he's surrounded by people in a way that Tim never was. Tim did not have a documentary crew around him all the time. And as you say, the nice Tim Duncan things about Victor Wembanyama, that Greg Popovich is going to have to approach coaching Victor Wembanyama in a much different way than he coached Tim Duncan, because Tim Duncan was just this guy who showed up, played basketball, could take a tongue lashing, and then moved on. Now, there's going to be Victor Wembanyama video cameras around. There's going to be just people around. Whether Victor Wembanyama wants to be marketed or not, that's just the way of the world now. And so it's the answer to the question, is he the second Tim Duncan? It's almost like there can't be another Tim Duncan in 2023 anymore.
Right. Yeah. No question. No question.
So that's kind of a fascinating there are many fascinating parts to this, but just the Victor Wembanyama machine, the media machine, the just the machine around him, it's not going to get in the way of the Spurs. And in fact, the celebration you saw from Victor on draft night, and what he said about how he woke up wanting to be a Spur, all that is believed to be absolutely true, because from what I hear, it's just his team believe that the Spurs have this well-run organization where they're going to take care of the details. They're not going to get lost in all the off-court stuff, and they can kind of just focus on basketball. And that could be really good for him. It could be really good for the Spurs, but it's going to be a different experience than it was with Tim Duncan.
Yeah.
You still here?
Yeah. Tim's the prototype. And I was just saying, will he have some of those qualities, not be a carbon copy of Tim, but
I wasn't saying that to refute what you were saying. I was just
I know
exploring. That's a really good topic. It's a really good topic, which is why I'm writing about it. It's something, and I think fans are going to love watching him play. I think there are going to be some growing pains. I think what Jeff said about some of the ways that the NBA is going to make him better are going to be true. I think there are going to be days and weeks when he looks lost, because every rookie does, and because maybe he can't run the ball up the floor against NBA competition the way he did in the French league. Like, there are going to be ups and downs. Whether or not the Spurs make the playoffs right away or who knows? But what you have is a guy who's going to be around for 4 years on his rookie deal. Most of these guys sign the supermax as soon as they can, or the maximum extension as soon as they can. You have both. It's contradictory, but you have both time, knowing that he's going to be around for a while, and he's somebody to build around, but also urgency in that you don't want to waste any of that time. You don't want to spend another year kind of just waiting to see what happens. And I think the Spurs front office, from R.C. Buford to Brian Wright to Greg Popovich, have all thought about these things very deeply, not only in the past few days, but over the past couple of years. And I think there's going to be, like I said, both patience and urgency to maximize this just profound, inexplicable luck that they got.
And we can talk about short-term expectations. You've kind of alluded to it a little bit, but I mean, in my thinking, like, the best case scenario for year one is they're competing for the playoffs. Maybe they don't make, but they're just in that mix. I know most of the fans that were celebrating at the bars and whatnot and honking their horns downtown on Tuesday night are probably thinking like it's a short drive from here to the next championship. And I guess I'm here to temper expectations there a little bit and say there's going to be a process involved in getting from here to there, and it's not going to happen in year one. It didn't happen. It almost never. It doesn't happen in year one for anybody, right?
Yeah.
Like, not even for the great Tim Duncan. And there's a lot of dissimilarities between the situation that Victor's entering with the Spurs and like when Duncan got here. Like, Duncan won a title in year two. He also joined a team that was in the lottery due to injuries. They had all-stars and Hall of Famers that just weren't playing that year. And when you got David Robinson back and you got Sean Elliott back and Avery Johnson, you had the core of a team that 2 years before Duncan arrived was winning 60 games, and then you added Duncan to that, and of course they're an immediate power in the West. With David, it was kind of the same way. He had to wait 2 years to do naval duty between his draft and joining the Spurs in '89. He joined at the exact same time as another lottery pick in Sean Elliott. They also had some other traded for Terry Cummings at that time, and they didn't win a title, well, really until Tim came, but they didn't become.
But they made the semis that first season.
Yeah, they became a Western power pretty quickly.
Yeah,
but I don't think we're gonna see that from Victor, just because the situation he's joining is different. He doesn't have his David Robinson to yet. He's everyone around him is young and talented, but they're going to have to add to that. The guys they have on the roster are going to have to both continue to develop and find a way to impact the game around Victor. So, like I'm saying, if they're competing for playoffs in year one, then I think they're on the right path. But beyond that, I think anything beyond that would be gravy.
And Jeff will be fleshing out this story for all the platforms of the San Antonio Express-News. It's an upcoming story
Coming soon.
LeBron James never won a title on his rookie contract or with his first team before he left to.
We've done this before. Like, who has?
LeBron James didn't make the playoffs didn't make the finals until year 4, and he's the best the NBA had seen before Victor. This century. It's really, we're not trying to completely throw cold water on the height, but I think it's important to keep a historical perspective on it.
I think San Antonio's history with these guys with these number 1 picks is kind of giving maybe like a false sense of something, because like we mentioned, like Robinson came and they set the record for biggest one season turnaround, and then Duncan came and they broke that record. Like every time they get the number 1 pick, they win 35, 36 more games the next season. And I guess we're just here to say that's probably not going to happen with this one. Just but some incremental improvement would be nice to see, and it's probably worth expecting.
Going a ways back, Bird's first season, they had the 32 win improvement and made the conference finals. So and then the Spurs bested that improvement record, but only reached the semis under Robinson.
Well, when we used to do this podcast regularly, we spent much of this season cautioning Spurs fans that, well, just because you tank and just because you have one of the best percentage chances to win the lottery doesn't mean you win it. Spurs fans are used to entering lotteries and winning them. That usually doesn't happen. And so we tried to throw cold water on that, and the Spurs fans said, you guys are crazy. If we tank the right way, we're obviously going to get Victor Wembanyama because the basketball gods like us, and we're going to get the guy. And so they're thinking the same thing now. These yahoos on the podcast and their secure locations, they're saying this almost never happens and that we shouldn't expect to win a championship next year. But we're the Spurs. Of course it's going to happen. Forget history. It's going to happen again. We proved them wrong by winning Victor, and we'll prove them wrong by competing for the 2024 NBA Finals next year against the Orlando Magic. Is that how it's going to happen? I don't know.
All over Victor.
They need to bring Kata back, though.
Yeah, that opening shot that you guys took at Kata was unfair.
No shot.
I think Kata was a fine Spur.
Yeah,
it was. He could still be.
He still could be. We'll get into roster moves, potential, I guess, second round draft picks at some point in the future.
No, we
won't wait.
No, we won't.
We won't wait another. It's been several months. We won't wait another several months to speak to you out there in podcast land again. But it's good to be back.
Well,
good to have some excitement around the program, even if Jeff might not fully appreciate it yet. He's just looking at all the stuff he has to do now.
Speaking of the second round picks, I think they better be the best second round picks the Spurs have ever made. Maybe minus Manu, because they're going to have so much time to prepare for them. You don't have to worry about your first round pick anymore. You spend no energy interviewing or scouting or arguing over who your first round pick is going to be. So all that energy can go into the second round, and Brian and those guys better knock those two out of the park.
They're putting a lot of pressure on those guys.
Yeah.
Best second round picks ever. Wasn't Manu Ginobili taken in the second round?
I mentioned that. You weren't listening to me.
I usually don't.
Yeah.
Okay. That's something to look.
Real quick, our hiatus was partly due to the loss of our producer, Luis de la Vasquez.
He just quit. He resigned.
Yeah.
He didn't pass on or whatever.
Right, exactly. Who did a great job. And will be very missed. Yeah.
Thanks to Luis. He's running restaurants now. Good for him.
I'm sure he's out there listening.
That's why I said it. I think he's out there listening.
Okay. Well, to Luis knows this, that, when one chapter ends, another begins. Make the best of it. Take care of each other. Keep it real. We'll see you next time.